Well, I'm not one to usually talk about what's going on with other individual people. I always focus on what I think are big events that have consequences for the entire world, or at least for the United States. But today, it's a Sunday. On Sundays, I feel a little more freedom to just sort of branch out into more abstract areas. And today I sort of want to have a little mini celebration for the success of Michael Malice's new book, which, well, it's not really, he didn't write it. He compiled a collection of essays from various anarchist thinkers, and I've been waiting for it to come out for a while, because I remember when he first talked about wanting to do this, because I thought it would be a good reference. And that's really all this book was intended to be. It's a collection of essays from anarchists throughout history, including quite a few people I'm a fan of. But I mean, since these are anarchist essays, they're all in the public domain. You know, you can go and read them online if you want. But it's handy to have them in book form. And for some reason, unexpectedly, this book is selling very, very well on Amazon. And this is something that's very encouraging, but it's also something that's worthy of analysis. Because obviously, yes, this is nice for Malice, and I like him, so I'm happy to see good people achieve success. But this book, if it's selling this well, and currently it's number 13 on Amazon, which is the highest I've seen it. This morning, I think it was 17. Yesterday, it was I got up to 23. It keeps climbing and climbing. It was back in the 30s a couple days ago, I think, when it first launched. I ordered it on Thursday, or was it Wednesday? Maybe I ordered it on Wednesday, got it on Friday. No, maybe it was yesterday. I can't remember. I got it in a couple days. Haven't had a chance to read it yet. Got a huge variety of people. Just again, I think of these sorts of things as in an academic context. I don't even think of it as as something that to have an impact on our broader politics, which is why I don't talk about abstract political philosophy too much. I have occasionally, but that's always in the context of trying to explain real world events. I don't really get into on this channel political philosophy for the sake of ratiocination. To borrow an old word from Mises, a word that I have to say I quite like and don't see used enough. And so then in that case, why is this collection of essays on abstract political philosophy, why do I think this is something of worthy of discussion? And I think it's simply because if this many people are buying the book, and we don't know who yet, and that'll be interesting. I think that maybe we'll start to, years later, this will be the kind of situation where we will hear people who become activists and speak publicly and say, hey, I read this book and it had an impact on me, because it's selling enough copies to where there's a lot of people who are going to read this book. And it can't just be everyone who already agrees with people like Michael Malice or me or Tom Woods or Dave Smith who are buying this book. It's just selling too well for it to be just people who are sort of in that clique. And so that leads me to believe perhaps you have Antifa types maybe who are buying this. I mean, and even that doesn't make sense, because the Antifa types I don't think buy a lot of books. But I mean, who is it that would be buying this? It's called The Anarchist Handbook. I don't know if I mentioned that. I should have mentioned the title of the book. And the cover of it, I guess it kind of looks like something that a left-winger Antifa type, if they saw that on a bookshelf, just judging a book by its cover, would go, hey, that's something that I might like. But even still, why would it be selling so well? I would think you could get a handful of those people, maybe who some Antifa guy goes on Amazon and types in anarchist book, in high school or something, and he scrolls down and he sees this and goes, ooh, anarchist handbook, I'm going to buy that. Yeah, I could see how you could trick some Antifa types into doing that, but why? Just right on the book's release, why is it selling so well? I don't think we're going to figure that out anytime soon, but judging by the numbers, I think that you can rule out that it's just because of these two groups of people who are already interested in anarchism, sort of the people who are fans of people like Michael Malice, and who are going to be on the right for the most part, and your Antifa types, even if you did have a significant number of your Antifa folks buying up this book by mistake, thinking that it was, some hard left-wing hate your dad philosophy, which, again, a lot of it is, this is not a right-wing book by any means. This is just purely straight anarchism with people from all over, including, left-wingers that Antifa types might like, but also, including Murray Rothbard, who they would hate. But seeing as how this is a catch-all, if people really do read through this book, they're going to get a lot of good content. And this is going to be the way that a lot of people are now going to read Anatomy of the State for the first time. And that's a big deal if you get somebody to read Anatomy of the State. Because if you come into reading, that's a very famous essay by Murray Rothbard, for those of you who don't know. That's one of those sort of texts that once you get somebody to read that as a normie, now again, if they already have pre-existing esoteric beliefs that are very hardened and well defined, you might not convince them. But if you just take a normie and you have them read that essay, it leaves a really, really big impact, and it's normally the kind of thing that people can't just unread. They don't read through all of Anatomy of the State and then go, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden or Liz Cheney. You don't do that. And same is true with, with Lysander Spooner, who he throws in there. And there's most of the people in this, well over half of the names on here, I don't recognize, because I'm not like Malice, and I go and I search out all of these anarchists throughout history. I'm not that interested in the abstract stuff. When I like to read about things, I like to read about historical events that really happened, not necessarily the history of all these different philosophies and things like anarchism or what have you. And so who knows what great red pills there might be in a lot of their writings too. But just the fact that Malice is now able, through this book, is going to be injecting a lot of very interesting writing that I know for a fact is going to have an effect on the people who read it is extremely encouraging. And I can't wait to read it to see how many other great gems he found that he put in here, because, Malice is someone whose judgment I generally trust. So I don't think that he's going to be putting, ANCOM trash in here. If there's an ANCOM that he puts in this book, I would imagine it's something really important and good that they wrote. And you can have people on the left who write some good things, Just look at Chomsky. Chomsky's written a lot of great stuff, even though I think that fundamentally he believes some really kooky stuff that would never work and is totally unreasonable. And so just as an example, this book is outselling by quite a bit now the 1619 Project, for example. And while the 1619 Project obviously has had help from the New York Times and a lot of other media groups pushing it, the people who are going to be really impacted by it obviously are going to want to read that book and to really drill down into what the 1619 Project is, and know it is something more than a phrase. And so the fact that more people are buying Malice's anarchist essay collection here than the 1619 Project just tells me, hey, as much as that intellectual poison of the 1619 Project is circulating in the American mind, in the American zeitgeist, there's a chance that better ideas could overpower that and circulate even more widely. And, it doesn't necessarily matter. You would say, oh, well, the people who are buying the 1619 Project are professors and teachers and folks in positions of power to influence people. And that's true. The people buying Malice's Anarchist Handbook are probably ordinary people who don't have a lot of influence over others, or at least not in the same sense as a college professor or a public school teacher. But nevertheless, some of those people inevitably will be college professors or public school teachers, and in many ways, even though you influence less people, as an individual, you have much more of an influence over the people within your circle than something like a teacher or a professor would. Because, you yourself, you have closer relationships with the people around you, with your family, with your closest friends. And so maybe you read this book, and you pick an essay out of there, and you say, wow, this is what I found really compelling. I'm going to hand this book off to a friend of mine and say, hey, read this chapter. Because it will really speak to, because all of these are going to be standalone chapters, because they're all by different authors and things. These are all separate essays that he just brought together. And so, for example, if you found whatever he has in there from Spooner, I assume it might be something from No Treason. I haven't looked yet. That's towards the end of the book, but I'm excited to get there. If that's what you found compelling, or you also, as somebody who's buying this book, could look at the different chapters and think about the people and go, hey, I think that my brother would find this point really compelling, and you just hand it to him and say, hey, read this chapter, and they do, and then that might be their red pill. And so in a way, every one of these chapters is a potential red pill for someone, and different ones might work differently for different people. And so every person who reads this, if they're a somewhat socially intelligent person who understands the people around them, could pick and choose and say, hey, I think my dad might find Anatomy of the State really compelling. Or I think my neighbor might really mesh well with the reasoning of David Friedman. It's not just it's not just a one-size-fits-all thing, like, hey, you have to agree with what this person's saying. You can, as the reader, you can pick and choose any one of these authors who all make their similar points about the state being illegitimate in different ways and from different perspectives. And you can use that to try and influence people who have different ways of thinking all around your life. And that's originally why I thought this would be such a valuable resource when Malice first talked about putting it together, because it should be seen as a reference book. And it's something that can be used to teach people about why the state is evil or why we don't need it. And fundamentally, if he put this together well, which again, I'll revisit this after I finish it and after I read everything. But I have enough trust in him to where I can somewhat endorse. I can give a preliminary endorsement of the book before I've read everything in it. There should be something for everybody in here, and including anyone listening to this. There might be a lot of stuff in there that you don't like how it's written, you don't agree with the points, but there should be something in there that appeals to everyone. Because as Malice puts it on the back cover, the black flag comes in many colors. There is no shortage of different variants of anarchism, of people who have different social beliefs and things, people who want to live in different kinds of societies, who have different ideas on what our society should look like, who all share an agreement that the state should not exist. And so something that's good about this book is that it is not just an ANCAP book. It's not just an ANCOM book. It's not just an Ann Prim book, although I can't think of any Ann Prim books. This is just an Ann book, an anarchist book. And after reading through all these, you should be able to tag people who are, again, not total normies who don't care about politics, but people maybe who you already discuss political issues with. You should be able to tag one of these essays in the back of your mind with their name and think, hey, this sounds like something that would appeal, that this writer thinks like my friend. This writer has similar values to somebody I know, and so therefore their message is likely to appeal to that person. So, for example, in my case, I come from a normal sort of Republican conservative foundational background, and so the people in this book who really, who I already know appeal to me are Murray Rothbard and Lysander Spooner. And who knows, I might find even more people who I agree with. You know, I mean, I know kind of off the bat, David Friedman, not so much. I don't find him that compelling. But I still like his points. I think he makes interesting points. He just talks about things differently than how I would present them. But that's something that certainly could work for some people. Benjamin Tucker, I'm less familiar with, but you know, I've seen Rothbard reference him quite a bit in his work. From what I understand, Tucker is another one of those who sort of roots his anarchism in the you know, the American individualist tradition, which again is going to appeal to, you know, your normal Republican types. But then there, you know, I'm sure there might even be a majority of people in this book who probably appeal more to the left wing. And frankly, that's a good thing, because if we could bring left-wingers more into this spectrum and get them to hate the state, that's much better than having them be bootlickers who hate cops protecting private property and love the ATF going and seizing people's guns, which is where they're at now. Oh, and wars in the Middle East are okay when Joe Bob does it, because at least then we don't have mean tweets. You know, no matter who it is in your life, there should be something in here. Again, if you know people well enough, you should know what's going to speak to them, and you sort of wake them out of this horrible, like, nonsensical paradigm of modern American politics, where people just constantly argue about things that, in the grand scheme of things, don't matter that much, and unlike the matters discussed in this book, are not matters of life and death. So, if I may, I would recommend this to anyone who's interested generally in the topic of anarchism. It doesn't mean you have to agree with it. I think that there's a lot of misconceptions and straw manning about the term. All that anarchy means is, you know, without the state or outside of the state. So to the extent that, you know, anyone believes that the state should not be doing certain things, they are in that capacity, you know, holding an anarchist position. You don't have to go all the way and say that there should be no government, period, to appreciate a lot of these arguments. And if you're someone who listens to this channel, you probably, like me, are going to find people like Rothbard, Spooner, and Benjamin Tucker, I would think, even though I haven't read the Tucker stuff. Tucker's the one I'm least familiar with of those three. Those are probably the guys that you're going to find the most persuasive, since they tend to think, you know, more in line with, you know, the American right. So I do plan to revisit this later, after I have read the entirety of it and give sort of a more complete review. But that's my initial impression, and I'm, you know, to me, it's the fact that this book is selling well is in and of itself newsworthy and something that should be discussed and celebrated. Because I do think, based on how this is selling, that down the road there's going to be a lot of people who cite this book as a major influence on their way of thinking, and that's something that I can be very happy about.